Hello, everyone. Today we have one of the fellow participant who is willing to share her background related to Agile and Scrum challenges. Some of them are related to various interviews she got asked, various questions she got asked during the interviews. So we explore your things, but before that, give us a little background about you so that we can relate to it.
Yeah, Saket, I have more than 10 years of experience in IT. I started my career as a business analyst and switched to Scrum Master.
Mhm.
Currently, I'm looking for new projects. That's the reason I'm applying for positions and giving interview and getting some difficulties, especially answering few questions.
Go ahead, bring your question.
My first question is, your team is forming and new to Agile. So they don't have any historical data. So how you will come up with the velocity for the stakeholders, because the stakeholders, they would be, willing to have some rough idea of velocity.
Okay. So see, it is something like you might be working as a Scrum Master or as a someone who is responsible for delivery, and you are getting started with a new team, and people say, how do you predict the velocity of this particular team? Now, yeah, there are ways to do it, and there will be always error in that prediction. What we need to try to find out as a question, So I would like to understand what is the objective of estimating velocity at this stage. It might be that we want to project some amount of roadmap and the release dates based on that velocity. We may have some amount of a story points. Story estimation is already done. So I need to understand, is this team is already done with estimating some set of user story? And if yes, then and is the objective of this velocity estimation is to projection of when are we going to do some releases based on these stories estimation. So that's the first thing I need to validate. Now, if the story estimation has been done, then we need to do a second estimation, which is all about how many stories or how many point of work we can finish in this iteration. Now, actually, it will be only come to know as we go along. But what we can do is we can have at this point in time some understanding of definition of done, because without definition of done, velocity is definitely a little vague. And based on that definition of done, you might be able to do some kind of a dummy sprint planning for 1 or 2 sprints to understand, based on the people available, the time available. If you really want to do it, how many story point work probably you will be able to do. So in a way, you can say that we do kind of a sprint planning, a detailed estimation at using hours and who will work on it, and try to identify how many stories as per the definition of done, probably we can take in a first or second iteration. And based on that, we may project a range of velocity. That range of a velocity might be good indicator to give you a projection for release, and the correction in that velocity will happen as we go through our iteration. So you finish one sprint, you correct your velocity, and that will refine the roadmap and release dates.
Okay, so just related questions. Uh, that means before starting the fast sprint, we can do some dummy sprint planning. Am I right?
Yeah, so it is all about the utility. It's not like everyone end up doing it. So say you are in an environment where they are looking for some release dates, when they are looking for some estimation, maybe it's a multi-team environment, maybe it is we don't know. So if there is a need of doing it, definitely what the objective of doing story point estimation for the backlog, which is little bit longer, like you have 2-3 iterations backlog, is to project something. One is that you use for prioritization. Second is you use that estimation also to understand how your releases and your product roadmap will look like. So definitely you can do some amount of estimation, a dummy estimation of velocity by one of the possible way is you divide some set of user stories into tasks, and you try to understand how many tasks one can do in a given iteration. And based on that work breakdown structure which you are doing for those user stories, you come up with a number based on the definition of done. You come up with a number that looks like this is the range we can target to. Yeah, so you do when you don't have a historical velocity of this particular team, you apply these kind of a judgment tool. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. But my answer was kind of different, I can say. First of all, I told I'll bring my experience to the table, and we'll have a rough estimations before starting the sprint planning, maybe 1 or 2 days before. And of course, we don't have any historical data. So what we normally do in that situations, let's assume that 4 is the story points, average story points, and we do four as the story points into number of weeks, like suppose in the sprint, suppose 2 weeks, then number of developers, for example 5 developers are there, 2 week sprints, then the approximated, just not baseline, approximated velocity will be 4 at the story point into 2 at the number of weeks into 5, it will be 40. So normally we used to do rather than
okay. So that is also another alternative. Now, but this alternative, better you use a word capacity estimation rather than a velocity estimation. So we need to understand what are they trying to do. And you can say that for initial iteration, we may do capacity-based estimation thing rather than velocity-based. So capacity-based estimation is that how many productive time you have available, and based on that, you are doing something. Yeah. The only issue here is if you don't, the assumption you are taking here is capacity and the story point estimations are matching with each other, but we don't have any input data telling that. So when the people have done story point estimation for the product backlog and they looked at a definition of done, we are assuming that they took a thought process which is matching with their capacity. For example, they were always thinking one pointer will take roughly between 1 to 2 days or 1 to 3 days. That's an assumption you are making. Yeah, but we don't know if that assumption was true or not. So even if that was true, then also the dummy story, some amount of estimation exercise will help them in forecasting the velocity. The only problem I see here is it is clearly the answer which you are using is talking about capacity based estimation. In some organization it is used, in some organization it is disliked. They don't want to do capacity based estimation, so you are going to a risk. How can you say that? The second problem I see is that we are not matching with story point estimation with this assumption. We don't know when we did a story point estimation was that's the reference people were taking. Are we saying 1 point for a story which takes 1 day to finish? Yeah? Like we don't know. So that's the another missing assumption here. And the third is you don't apply your judgment here, because you may not know the technology, you may not know the definition of done, the depth of a definition of done. So we need to engage team only to do the estimation of a velocity. It might be a little bit error prone, but yes, this is something we have to do with it. Yeah, that's the whole idea. Now I do see you have a lot of safe experience as well. The scaled agile end up doing capacity based estimation the way you were talking about, but their objective is just to plan for the capacity for upcoming 4 iterations. So that's the thing which you do in a PI planning space. In some time, I think that the experience you might had is that you were using capacity-based estimation, but during that time, you might be also using the similar standard when you are estimating the user story.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you so much.
So let me reiterate the situation, and then let's see what we can do about this. Yeah. So situation seems to be that you have a senior person who is playing a product owner role, and this person is in the organization, has a good reputation for a while, let's say 20 plus year, and he or she has a good reputation about knowing his trade, his subject. So people don't want to challenge her. So that's a situation at hand. Now, and she's expected to work with your development team, and she keeps everything on her mind. She doesn't like people asking questions too much, and during the sprint planning meeting, she comes up with all the requirement, but the requirements are not well refined, and team find difficult to estimate those requirements. So they end up committing something, and at the end, you have a problem in meeting the sprint goal. And you have seen this as a trend for 2-3 iteration, and you as a Scrum Master is wondering what to do.
Yeah,
that's the situation. Okay. Now, see, any situation, any problem we face, we try to start from understanding what is the situation and what are the consequences of this situation. And we try to make a common understanding about the situation as well as the consequences among the stakeholder who can do something about it. So say the impact of not delivering the sprint goals on a multiple times has to be quantified and somehow politely need to be made very visible to the stakeholders that we are missing our sprint goals on a consistent basis. That is something, as a Scrum Master, my role is making this transparent to everyone. So I should not let people hide this information. That's my accountability. As a Scrum Master, I'm accountable for transparency. That is my main job. What happened after transparency is not that much in my control, but I need to make sure that this information is available to everyone. That's the one thing. Now, hopefully, by making this information available, people start worrying about why it is happening. And when people start getting worried about why it is happening, you as a Scrum Master with the development team as well as a product owner can facilitate that, what can we do? Maybe a small retrospective or a special retrospective. What can we do to overcome this situation? So you are not saying that product owner should share the information in advance. That's your perception about it. What you are saying is, I do see that we are unable to meet sprint commitment over a period of time, and I want to explore what is not working, which is making us end up in this situation. It could be the communication gap between product owner and development team. It could be something else also. Let the team come up with their collective intelligence. Assuming if they reach that, we need to handle in a better way between product owner and development team, then possibly you can facilitate. That's the third step you are saying, that you can facilitate some amount of a working agreement between a product owner and the development team, which improves the situation. We are not saying any ideal situation, some amount of working agreement. It could be that we have some understanding, before you discuss the story in the sprint planning meeting, please give us 1 week advance notice. And in the 1 week advance notice, you may give a brief about those user story over the small call or over the email. You figure out what works for you. And this is how we take it forward. And this is how this is going to benefit us. And let's try it out for a few iterations. And then we will see if we need to correct or modify it. So it is about negotiation skills. It's about networking skills. It's about influencing skills, which a Scrum Master need to apply. But by showing the things transparently, by not judging that it's your problem or my problem, making stakeholder talk about it, and then finding some working agreement, some workable approach which can take the thing forward.
Yeah, that sounds good and practical.
Yeah.
And the third one is how will you make sure that the team is maturing?
Yeah. So see, actually, I don't know, if someone knows this answer, they could be a very rich and high productive company, if that's the only thing one need to know in any organization. If I know how do I make my team engage, if I know how soon I can make them high performing, the job is done. Yeah, the job is done. You don't need anything else afterwards. So it's a little, I think, try and error kind of thing. So you try something and you see some errors and then you fix them. So it's hit and try kind of stuff. So yes, we want to make our team developed. We want to make our team self-organized. Now, what do you do? And what kind of a step as a Scrum Master you can take, which possibly can help them? So in my understanding, there could be 10 theoretical answer. The real action will depend upon overall team culture, how the team is coming up. And it also depends upon individuals in the team. Some may behave differently than others. And it may not be a universal approach across people. So there will be some kind of adjustment of the treatment when it comes to different people. So that's a overall thing. But how do we get started? So initially, when you start working with the team or with new set of people, whoever is new set of people, we start with formal agreements. So initially, the development team, it's better as a Scrum Master, you facilitate, they're forming the team charter, they're forming a ground rule, they're adhering to the ground rule and following that as a structure. So you start initially with the help of setting some environment for collaboration by way of creating ground rules and some kind of a measurement and monitoring system. So that's something you put by way of adhering to Scrum events, sprint planning doing well, the sprint retrospective is done well, the sprint reviews are done well, and sprint daily Scrum is done well. So technically speaking, if you just manage these 4 events at a with the right intent, the team will start developing automatically because you are facilitating all these events and they are getting a lot of environment and opportunity to talk to each other in the real sense. So start with a team charter, have a ground rules made, and then then improve your effectiveness of Scrum events. That itself makes things better. The another part, so that's the Scrum part. The another part is the Scrum values part, or in a way, how much comfortable they feel with each other. So don't undermine as a Scrum Master the importance of people knowing each other beyond work level. So you promote networking among the people, you promote non-official conversation among the people, which helps them in building trust with each other. So the more I know someone, the more I feel comfortable raising the issue, challenging the issue. So I as a Scrum Master facilitate such kind of an interaction, which makes people open up with each other. So I start with a working agreement. I start with focusing on structural aspects, like the meetings are happening well. And then once I have some sense there, I start ensuring that people start knowing each other. They start doing some understanding of each other. And many times there are conflicts. There will be a people who will say this and that. You may use those opportunity as an opportunity to make people know well about each other, and that's how you progressively progress. So you build trust, you handle that teaming agreements, you run the sprint events well, and over a period of time, as you see things are maturing, then you start giving them more and more responsibility and accountability for managing their work. So you start letting them facilitate their sprint planning meeting rather than you facilitating. You let them facilitate your daily Scrum. So you depending upon what is happening, you start doing that. And the best thing to reflect on how team is doing is to increase the effectiveness of retrospective meetings. So you don't have to do any additional thing, but make sure in the retrospective we are using it for inspect and adapt, and also about inspect and adapt about how we are doing. So these are like roughly few things which can work here.
Yeah, Saket. What I felt, if I elaborate, then I don't know whether the interviewer will
listen to me.
So I came up with some fact-based, like, yes, if it's the team is new, we can start that, and we'll focus few factors at a time, like having the Scrum charter with the consent from the team members as well as product owner. But yeah, there would be some, suppose, a backlog, burn down chart. So we can track and see how it is, progressing on daily basis. We can have it, discussion on that. And there will be velocity at the same time, like continuous improvement, inspect and adapt, and especially retrospective. So we'll follow 1 or 2 at a time, and let's see how the team is performing and adapting. And after a couple of sprints, we most of the time we felt and we have seen that the team is getting mature day by day, like getting self-organized, as you mentioned, networking, or if in case they have any questions, they have the right to reach to the right persons. So that just I felt if I elaborate, then whether the interview may or may not take interest. So I pointed to facts.
Perfect. So
Right.
you need to point to the fact, and better you point it when you are answering in an interview space, you point it to some of your existing experiences. So you can say, I started with this team, I started with a working agreement, and initially I was only focusing on running daily Scrum well. And after one and a half months time, I started focusing on Scrum ceremony as a good team building activity. For this particular team, it worked like this. And then you may take another team, and another team I started mid in between. So there was another case where it was an old Scrum team, but I joined in between. Assuming if you have an experience like that, then you may have a different style of taking it forward. So you give 1 or 2 such example, and that's good.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Then about the release plan, how you do the release plan and what will be your role as a Scrum Master.
So I think we discussed as the whole idea of a release plan is setting up some expectation for upcoming duration, customer deliveries or product deliveries. That's the whole idea of a release plan. The duration of a release plan depends upon the environment, the variability in the requirement. And so that's the generic thing. It's all about prediction. It's all about estimation. How many features or how many user stories can get releases in how much time. That's the thing you do in a release planning. So I, as a Scrum Master, make sure that everybody is looking at the right information. So I help the team to see the historical trend related to velocity. That's the thing which I probably help them. I also facilitate them in ensuring that user stories are well estimated, well prioritized, because that's the another input to a release planning. And so like you need to know the estimated velocity, you need to know the estimated or a set of user stories. And then you may also facilitate some kind of an interaction between a product owner so that he's clear what is the objective of upcoming release. So you may have a release vision or a release objective kind of a artifact that in this particular, the objective is met through some amount of product backlog item, but what we are trying to achieve in the release. Yeah. So that's the objective of that particular release. So I facilitate discovery of that, and then a healthy conversation. So actually your role is healthy conversation and accumulating the information which is spread across. So you ensure people talk, and then you compile things. You facilitate that, these things are getting put into the electronic tool. Everybody has a common understanding of what we are going to do in iteration 1, iteration 2, and iteration 3. What are the risks associated with the release? So you probably talk about maintaining a list of risks which are demonstrated in your common space or Confluence or wherever you do. So you bring those kind of example where you explain your role related to the release planning. Yeah, it's a long-term planning.
Okay, but whatever I used to answer, maybe wrong, no, right or wrong. Like we do a rough estimations for all the backlog items that need to be included for the particular release. It is not exact, to be honest. For example, let's see. The whole backlog estimation rough is 200, then there would be some cone of certain uncertainty, like depending upon the maturity of the team. If it is a new team, then normally put like 0.6, and there would be some velocity trend from the past few iterations, let for example 20 or 30. Then there would be some mathematical calculations to get that particular, like suppose 20 is the velocity and 0.6 is the uncertainty cone, like then multiply that 0.6 into 20, it will be around 12. Then divide that like
I got.
200
So
divided
you are
by.
sharing the calculation. Is the interviewer wanted to know that? So see, what you are trying to show
Yes,
is that
that
we are
that is
doing.
my point.
Yeah.
Whether I should explain whatever we used to do. Actually, we do the way you explained, just uh, the release, how it should go. But I don't know. I thought I should come with a typical, fact-based answer.
No. So the idea here is, see, I don't know. When you are in a conversation, and different interviewer may have a different expectations also. So there could be a one way. How do you do release level estimation and planning? So it's a simple way to say the release level estimations are done based on story points. Yeah. So you do a story point estimation, and we do a velocity driven planning. So velocity driven planning means we pick up a number for a velocity, and based on the iteration velocity, we project that these many story points can be done. That's a simple thing. Now, what happens inside it? For example, who estimates the user stories, and who estimates that velocity number, and how do you drop those user story into iteration 1 and iteration 2 and iteration 3? That is what all happens in a release planning. So as an input to a release planning is your calculation. So you can say that we can say that in this release, we are anticipating 100 points of user story. Now, from where it came, you had a historical understanding of a velocity, and you projected a velocity for upcoming 4 iterations, assuming. Yeah. So that much is clear. Now we need to fit the items. Yeah. So there are backlog items which are estimated. Now, who will estimate them? The team will estimate them. So you facilitate first an understanding of, if I use a safe language, you make them understand the capacity of each iteration. And now, based on their user story estimate, they are loading the iteration. They load the iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3 based on the priority which has been explained to them as a goal for release. And that is how we figure out and we understand what are the risks associated with it, what are the dependencies associated with it. I, as a Scrum Master, point them out, ask them out, please point out all the dependency, please point out all the risk, all the challenges you have in giving this release, the assumptions you are making in this particular release. And by doing all this, they come up with a release plan. The release plan, you can explain how the release plan look like. You can say release plan has a four iteration box, assuming you are doing for 4 iteration. And we tell iteration 1 will be having these many user stories, and the estimated velocity based on these many user stories this, and this iteration 2 will have these many user stories. It has an estimated velocity of this, and based on that, we come up with a release plan.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. So calculation is more or less there, but yeah, the way you present is something. It should not look too theoretical. So what the person wants to hear, then accordingly we do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, as you mentioned, this will be a one input in the release plan. A number of things happens in that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
At the same time, what is not the plan where we will stick to get the result, but rather than with sprints, it may get deviated by whatever plan.
Yeah, but the thing is that is not the question person might be asking. So be clear what the person is asking. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Should we go?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So you are forming a new team and your customer needs the deliverable. So how you will manage to meet the deadline? The question is not complete, I feel.
I think more or less same the release planning. So the best judgment we have is a release planning. So in the agile world, whatever estimation people are looking at, whatever deliverable they are looking at, whatever forecast they are looking at, the best thing we can do is release planning. We don't have any further drill down to it. Now someone will say, can you tell us the deliverable when they will come and you are using agile? Then we need to understand why they are using agile, because if you have a very clarity of a deliverable, then what is the sense of using agile? So we need to understand. And the essence of using agile means that there is some variability in the deliverable. You are expected to have some surprises. That's why you are doing inspect and adapt.
Okay. So in between, is it a good practice to ask the questions to the interviewer? Can I understand why you want this, or agile? It's not very fixed or a little bit unpredictable. As the team will progress, as the sprint will go ahead, then we can come up. Okay, what is we're going to deliver upon.
Yeah. So what you can do is rather than becoming little upfront, you can share your experience. So what you can say, in our experience, in my experience, we used to handle the stakeholder expectation from the upcoming work with the help of sharing the release plan. And we also tell them that release plan has some milestones, has some deliverables, but there could be some adjustment, because especially in the initial releases, because we are still learning. It's an agile way of working. So we do a release planning which gives some forecast, and then we do a sprint by sprint work, and each sprint we update the release plan. And we send a formal communication, assuming so that people know which particular milestone will get met and which particular milestone will not get met. So this is how we handle the future projection, even starting from a new team as well as with the old team. So you can bring that. And then ask that, is there anything else needed by the client? Then we need to find out how do we serve that. We need to understand how possibly we can handle that part.
Yeah. The next question, should we go?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
What gives you immense pleasure? It was, so unclear.
It's a general thing. It's a general thing. What I understand. What I understand is, if you ask these kind of questions, are primarily to understand the personality type of a Scrum Master. What makes you feel good? So maybe some Scrum Master may feel good when your team can do a lot of Scrum ceremonies without you involving you. So you feel that I feel good when I see my team doing, say, retrospective meeting without me attending it. Yeah, so something like this. So that's a one kind of someone may get a pleasure by seeing that. That's a one possibility. Someone who may feel good by seeing the sprint commitments get met and the team is improving sprint by sprint. So, someone who is coming from a delivery orientation process, he may see more satisfaction. He may get more satisfaction when he end up observing that, my team is producing something which they have committed to. That's a one thing. The third possible, I'm just sharing, it all depends upon the uses. The third possibility is the team, the work we have produced as a Scrum team. I see that product is running on my client's machine. I see users adding interaction to it, user doing transactions to it. And when I pass by seeing my product is getting used by hundreds of users, and I see those statistics, that gives me a very satisfactory thing, because we have added value to the end customer. We have solved somebody's problem. And when I see, my end users are doing the job, and my application, whatever I am using, is getting utilized, and that is something helping solving my customer's problem, that gives me a pleasure. So, there are various things so you need to see, again, I don't see there is a right and wrong answer. Maybe you should be a little authentic. So you should see which part of the work you are more attached to. And the other person might wanted to see where, how do you look at work and things, and what is a fitment, and probably understanding some kind of a personality, as well as adapt, like fitment of that personality in their environment. Yeah.
So what clicked my mind, like, immense pleasure, not only pleasure. I just cross-checked with them. Okay, but whenever my team successfully delivers as per the client's need, and definitely if it is contributing to the progress of the project as well as to the organization, then that gives me pleasure. And the next questions from the interviewers, can you just give some example? Then I cited, yes, there are some sessions where the client were recognizing different teams, departments, and they call my teams for the best performance. That gave me immense pleasure. But
Yeah.
I was thinking whether, okay.
Yeah, good. I think it is, and we don't know it was appropriate for him or her or not, because they are just trying to find out which type of thing you like. Yeah, when it comes to work. Yeah.
Okay. Again, later on, it came to my mind. Okay, should I answer and question them? Which type of pleasure, like it's personal or professional? Because it was not clear. It was very
No.
good conversation.
I think it's a usual thing which we can understand, that they are trying to understand which part of the work environment is making you happy. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. The next question:
Yeah.
do you think that agile development is like mini waterfall?
So we need to understand what is the definition of mini waterfall. The only thing is that if we don't take, so idea of agile is fast feedback. That's the whole thing. And
Yeah.
we may want to make the fast feedback is on a daily basis rather than on a weekly basis. So it is something like, even inside the sprint, there should be a multiple feedbacks. It should not be that only at the end of a feedback, at the end of a sprint, we are getting the feedback. So we want to, you can say, when multiple streams are running in parallel, if you call it waterfall stream, so if you can say a waterfall stream is a one user story, waterfall stream is another user story. So the way I see agile is that, if you are working on 5 user story in a given iteration, you have a 5 waterfall streams happening at the same time. Rather than one stream of a waterfall in a 2 weeks time, you have a 5 streams are happening in a time. So it is, so I don't know what is the essence of a mini waterfall, and I think you should say that. And it is continuously overlapping. So it's not like inside the iteration, only initial 4 days, we are only doing requirement for all 5 stories. We might have done requirement for story 1 on the day 1, and the development of a story 1 on the day 2. And we might be doing requirement for story 2 on a day 2. Yeah, so there is a stream happening, but yeah, there is a sequence in a story 1. There is a sequence. We may work on requirement, test, develop, and all those things. There is a sequence of work for a given story, but it is not a sequence of work for the whole work. So we run multiple parallel streams, and that's what we call in the agile world. So phases are overlapping. So you don't have an overall phase at an iteration level or as a project level. You have overlapping all the time because you have a multiple streams running in place. So that's how you have been using it. So you put that point also. That is how we have been using it, agile.
But I feel like, no, it's not mini waterfall. Even in few sprints, suppose in one sprint we are designing, okay? So that design document can be used for multiple sprints. I have seen like 3, 4 sprints, it's, development or executions going on based on that design. Even every user stories are maybe a little bit, I can say, yeah, user stories, we don't do analysis or every page. In that sense, we can say like mini waterfall, because at least 50% should be, matching, to,
Yeah. So the idea here
give
is
a
my recommendation is stay away from these kind of a words. Waterfall,
okay.
mini waterfall, not waterfall, because everyone has their own interpretation. So you take it directly to what you do. Yeah. So you can say, the idea of agile way of working is fast feedback loop. I don't get into the thing, it's a waterfall or not waterfall. Fast feedback loop. Generally, waterfall is associated with large batch size, long feedback loop. You do something for a while, and after that you check, am I doing it right? And when I do agile, I may end up checking my work every alternate day. I do something, I validate it, I test it, and I say everything is working, then I move to the second step. So I explain what I do rather than I get into a theoretical discussion. It's a waterfall, mini waterfall, or hybrid waterfall. I would avoid that conversation because it could be a controversial conversation.
Mhm. Then next question, I think, it's very common, like what and how you report to your upper management. Sometimes, daily standards also we put the upper management CC, but some organizations or maybe managers, they don't like to, getting all the like daily standards or small events reports. So they may like, once in 1 or 2 week. So I thought like how it should be, proper answer, how I can. Did you get my point?
Yeah, I got your point. So how do you handle that? So if someone is asking, how do you report to the senior management as a Scrum Master? So see, usually in a reality, this all depends upon your organization culture, your organization process. Yeah? So you have a governance system, you have some mechanism, you have your agile COE, some kind of a governance system, which ensures the things are going on track. And if something is needed, they can intervene and help us. Yeah. So we need to explain
Oh,
how is our governance system. So you can say that we have a governance system which is meant for facilitating and removing blockers which we cannot remove. Yeah. And the essence of that governance system is to flag those issues early and often. Yeah. And in order and as a Scrum Master, I am responsible for ensuring that there is a complete transparency of our project work to the governance system. So that can help us in open and healthy conversation. That's the whole idea. You want to
yeah.
get feedback and get the things moving as and when needed. So now you can explain what is your current governance system, which might include sending some weekly set of reports, which might include that there is some review meetings. You can say every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, we have a review meeting where Scrum Master and product owner also expected to participate and talk about what is happening in their thing. Many times we invite those governance people in a sprint review only, but you may have a reality where these people are not available for each sprint review. They might be running their separate governance meeting where you might fill some data or you might be present there. So that's a whole thing. Now, if you are now the only issue starts with is when you are getting interviewed in a service organization and they do a project for client one, project for client B, and project for client C. And for all these clients, the different governance system might be in place. So because each project owner may have a different need. So in those situations, if you are coming from service organization, you can say you also have a working agreement, external working agreement, so which we make. So as I start a new project, the way we have an internal working agreement, we also have an external communication and working agreement made. We understand when are the situation, what are the instances where they need to be informed, at what frequency they need to be informed. So we create some amount of communication plan and we follow that communication plan as per our external working agreement. And we also do a periodic retrospective on it. If something is need to be modified there, we modify that. So you can share some example from your current experience, or you can say this is how this is how usually people work. That is what I am sharing here. Yeah.
Proper governance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the next question is how you deal when the product owner comes up with some new requirements during the mid sprints. It's a common questions, but if you feel. we can go
Yeah.
ahead with
So
it.
see, the idea here is that, people have been talking no change during the sprint and how do we handle these things and all. So again, we need to focus on what we call it, prioritization, or say issue related to and the problem associated with it. So that's the whole thing we need to focus on. So how do we handle that? Yeah. So the idea here is what happens if we keep changing our sprint goal during the sprint? What will be the result of it? So there will be a lack of predictability. There will be a lack of say it's like this. I plan my work. I start doing my work, and someone says, "Oh no, forget about that plan. Let's do something new." Yeah. So why I planned my work? I wasted time in planning my work. Now, if the situation is like this, that you cannot plan your work in the morning, then better I don't plan my work. I wait for someone to come and tell me what to do, and then only I do. So that could be a situation where you do something else than Scrum because your work is so unpredictable. Assuming if you get into a situation where in reality work is so unpredictable, you cannot predict your work for a week or two, then you may better do something else rather than doing Scrum. So you do something else as a process. But the idea of a Scrum is that there is some amount of stability. There is some amount of thing where you can say, yes, at least for 2 weeks time, we know what we are doing. Now, again, I'm saying in a normal cases, 90% of the cases, we should not do a discussion related to 10% situation where something can go wrong. Exceptions has to be taken in a different way. There could be a one instance in a 3-4 months where you end up doing something during your sprint, and that is something logically useful, and you all agree to do that. But in general, you don't want to change the sprint goal because you want to ensure the amount of time, amount of energy we spend in a sprint planning meeting that remain relevant, rather than we pick up something, we get started, and we confuse during the sprint itself. So that's a one reason, and I will have a conversation with my product owner to understand what is making him or her to do it. So there could be other justification as well. So if someone does the change during the sprint, maybe one or two developer can only look into it. When we are doing sprint planning, everybody's reviewing it, everybody's giving feedback. So we have a proper knowledge about what we are going to do. But when we do some kind of adjustments in between, we don't have that knowledge. So we lose that. We lose the collective knowledge of the work, and all those things can create a bigger issue at the later stage. So that's why I try to educate my product owner. And at the same time, I will also empathize with my product owner and try to understand what makes him do this or request for this frequently. Is there something we need to improve in the requirement space? For example, we need to improve in a backlog refinement stage, or maybe we need to start reserving some capacity for such kind of unforeseen work. So if that's a reality, we can say, okay, in a sprint, we are only planning for 70% capacity, 30% capacity will be kept for emergencies. There could be a possibility of doing it. So I do a joint retrospective with the product owner and the development team if needed to find out how to deal with it. First, I educate, I empathize with the PO, I educate the PO, and jointly we work together to find out how we can handle it.
Yeah. So what I felt like, it depends upon the organizations, the culture, and I gave few examples like it's a practical way where the team is really matured, the tech leads and few senior developers, they are too matured and they can handle within an hour, like if few changes. And there's a very good rapport between the team as well as the product owner. Product owner knows like he's not going to come up with sub abstract changes, but something that they used, it may be predictable. In between the sprint, we may get little bit changes as per depends on the user's needs. But at the same time, the team used to keep little buffer, like you mentioned 30 or 20%. So we used to keep for those kind of changes. So there is not so hard and strict rule. We should not go or change the things, but there is a mutual agreement between the team as well as PO. If they need really it needs to be changed little bit, it will be helpful for the next deliverable, then yeah, both the team agrees. But at the same time, if it is a very complex changes, then we used to look into the burn down chart where we can get what the bandwidth, current bandwidth. If there is some available bandwidth, then the team never hesitate to do that. So I was thinking it's better to come with some example or scenario rather than generalize with all the experience or all the team. So better first come up with what is the organization sort of how the team, their maturity, and I just explained that way. I felt it is a genuine thing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
basically,
So we educate people about the consequences. We look for the things, in my view, I don't give a theoretical answer which says yes and no. So the direct yes and no is difficult to give, but yeah, that is something we need to
yeah, with
explore
an
based on the
example,
situation. Yeah, based on the
yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Giving some situations and coming up with what the generally I have done, or maybe the people used to do in that situations, it will be better. And the last questions, it's very generic, but I feel like with whom I should discuss what bring you here and why you are looking for a new projects. Now, of course, like suppose there are many reasons, but what will be the best suitable answer that may impress the interviewer? The
So
path
again,
of the
yeah, so it is
don't
about that the same question, like what gives you immense pleasure. It is more
even split.
about understanding your personality. Yeah, it is very, very I think. So the thing which I can share as is that you should not be criticizing your current experience. So that's something you should not be doing. You should not be undermining your current experience. That's the important part. But at the same
Mhm.
time, if you show that everything is good, then person will say, then why are you living this such a beautiful place where you are already? So why are you looking outside? So at the same time, there has to be some dissatisfaction. There has to be some issues which you want to resolve. Ideally, try to find those areas which are linked with future growth rather than they are linked with something. Everything is good, but I'm looking for something like this. I think I have done enough here, and I'm reaching somewhere where it is getting little saturated. So I'm looking for these kind of opportunities. So you can explain these kind of opportunity, and then the challenge is they will be thinking that can they give those kind of opportunity to you. So that's the reason of an interviewer asking you, because he or she may wants to understand what this guy is looking for, and can we give her that thing, else she will also feel dissatisfied here. So I need to understand what is her reasons of leaving, and I need to see, are we resolving those reasons here? So that's the trick they are trying to find out. So if you tell them, no, I want to work in a very creative environment, and they may start feeling we are not that creative. No, this person may not settle in our place also. So it's a little issue. But if you have some proper reasons, like you might be, you can say, this initiative is closing. So anyway, we are taking a logical pause. So whatever initiative I was working in, I need to find something new, either inside the company or outside the company. So I'm looking at both the places. So that's a clear cut. So inside
Yeah.
the company also you have to go to some other project, or outside also you have to go to some project. Then it's relatively simple. But if not, then you need to find, and in a way it's good thing also. If they cannot give you what you are looking for, then also they also better come to know that they cannot give you. So it might be a good idea for not to join such companies as well. So it is more about fitment. So what is dissatisfying you, and internally they might be thinking, how can we satisfy you?
Yeah, that's the main reason I don't know. I normally refrain answering this. I don't know any future plan, or no, I want to grow in other organizations than them. That may give an insight, like oh, we may or may not be suitable for you. Then normally I prefer the project is going to end or something kind of things. But I feel there may be some better answer rather than that, as you explained. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it's not.
yeah, it's a tricky, and I think it's a good thing also. So better we know what the other people can do, and all those things. Yeah.
Yeah, very common questions, but at the same time, I feel that also.
Yeah, it's a common question because it is trying to expose your thinking process, and looking for alignment, and you cannot have a scripted answer for it. Yeah.
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 Okay. That's it, Saket. Thank you so
Good,
much for your
good, good,
time.
good, good, good.
Yeah.
So it was nice talking, and if we have any follow-up conversation, we'll see if we wanna do something else again. Yeah.
Okay. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye, everyone.